Hello, what's up, mediums? Welcome back to another episode of Live here on Keystroke Medium. I am Josh Hayes, here with Scott Moon and Chuck Manley, and welcome.
That's me.
Welcome. Well, I love the new Tuesday show.
Welcome.
I have to say, I'm really excited
about. We
about
have to change the name of our business
our chat.
Our chat.
Yeah, our little chat. The three of us.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Because we're not the Monday morning crew anymore.
No,
I think we need to be the Coyote 3.
The Tuesday afternoonish.
Three coyotes.
The Tuesday 3.
The two. Yeah, I like that.
The three Wordsketeers.
I actually like that a lot. And we can come up with their own special dance where they're like, the three
and sing it every time. Yeah, that'd be great.
Let's see. Corey Gillen was the first comment of the day, so he gets the Keystroke Medium golf clap.
Somebody beat Partlow.
The Keystroke Medium golf clap of appreciation for the first comment after Rick Partlow, or in this case, that's the first comment. So congratulations, Corey. Welcome to the show. Patricia, hello. And hey, there's Rick. Speak of the devil. Hello.
I messaged Rick, and I was getting ready to send out a check welfare and make sure he's okay.
Welfare check.
He says, "Oh damn, I forgot." So.
Nice. Let's see. Leo is here. John is here. Good evening from the UK. Welcome. Charlie is driving through Minnesota today.
I'm sorry.
Minnesota. So yeah, we're gonna kick back into the discussion we had a couple of weeks ago about creating character arcs by K.M. Weland. We had a couple of off episodes and we had some good topics for other episodes, and I figure, you know what, we'll come back and keep talking about it, because we talked about a lot of things on the first time we talked about this topic, but we covered predominantly the positive change arc, and in this episode I think we'll touch on the flat and negative change arcs. What the interesting thing about the flat arc is that I didn't know, but that is most of what I write. And like I mentioned on the last episode, when we were talking about like multiple characters having different kinds of character arcs and how different kinds of character arcs can affect other character arcs, and like thinking of it that way, really kind of forced me into looking at it cognitively, like paying attention to what I was doing with the different characters. Go ahead, Scott.
I would say what I found interesting about the flat character arc is that every writing book I picked up for the last 40 years, or a class I took, they always talk about the character change arc, and it makes it seem like that's the dominant change arc, and it kind of is, depending on the genre. But there's a lot more flat arc stories out there if you really know what to look for, and that's what I thought was amazing. That kind of opened my eyes a little bit. And that's why I have a problem with a lot of the stuff we read, and because I'm like you, I've been writing books for decades, and they always kind of present these things as this is what you have to do.
Right.
And that's not. No, it's not. There's flat arcs. There's positive change arcs.
This is what my professor said when I was in graduate school. So
right. Exactly.
Right.
And and of course, those guys, they always encourage you to write genre fiction.
Right.
They don't. They don't.
I sent your.
They're not literati snobs. No, it's.
Well, and it's interesting because one of the big things that I've always heard is like your character needs to change. Something needs to change about your character in the book. But really, on a lot of the fiction that we write, like me specifically, writing mill sci-fi, even space opera that is leaning more towards mill sci-fi, but not technically the genre, most of that is flat arc, and that is something that I had.
And there is change, they're inspiring change,
right?
Or
because it's
standing up for
instead of internal.
Yeah,
most of the time, even though it can be both. Like I said, there's a section of this book that talks about the flat arc,
it can be subtle,
and you can actually have a mini positive change arc or negative change arc, like right at the beginning of the book, and that affects the flat art of the book all the way through. Like they were talking about.
That's a good point. It's not
Batman,
really one or the other.
Batman Begins, that movie is a flat arc movie, but it begins with like the prologue is kind of a mini positive arc where they change.
Right. Or it could be a flatter arc. Maybe it's not
flatter.
There's different types
I mean,
of arcs.
every story should have a change arc, because you can't really have plot without something changing.
Right.
But that doesn't necessarily mean a profound shift in your characters.
Right.
You know, it's not, it doesn't always have to be some deep emotional, you know, change to the core of their being. I mean, I haven't, they do obviously I didn't do my homework and read the book like you guys did, but there were a couple.
No one would have known had you not said anything.
There were a couple of points in there, and you know, I don't know the author of this book, but I don't know, a couple of things I kind of went, no, not really. I don't agree with that. Like she was talking about this thing where apparently my wall is freaking walled out. She was talking about this thing about where there's a character that tells himself a big lie and how
the lie the character believes. I think that's interesting.
They have to really desire this change and yada yada. Now, granted, I did not finish the book, so maybe there's something there later that contradicts that. But character arc changes in a book aren't always necessarily voluntary.
Right.
You know, sometimes like if somebody gets cancer or gets kidnapped or something, that's not a change that they want to occur. That's something that's forced on them.
And it can be
it's not always about them lying to themselves or them, you know, wanting to correct some great flaw in their character. Sometimes shit happens and you have to adapt. So I don't know. There's just a couple of things that seemed a little touchy-feely to me.
Because I didn't key into that the same way you did. I had a problem like picking apart the ambiguous nature of those statements. Like it was the lie that they believed or the truth that he didn't like. She says that so much in the book, it kind of like threw me off a little bit.
Right.
I was having trouble following the point that she was trying to make because it was so ambiguous.
Well, and I think that makes perfect sense, but it's that ambiguity that I kind of see the writer in the writing in that instance.
Right. It's one of those things where it's like all of these principles we talk about, they don't apply to every situation. When you take because I think the lie the character believes can be a useful tool to kind of see inside the head of a character if it fits that character in that situation.
Right.
But in the book, they're trying, and that's what happens with academic stuff, is you want to make your thesis apply to all these things. And so they tried to apply it to all these things I didn't really think it applied to.
Right.
And it makes it kind of cheapens it a little bit. But I think there's some value to that, the lie the character believes.
No, that absolutely is for the right character and the right story. You know,
I think too, like her examples made it a lot easier for me to understand instead of just reading like this. There was the lie that they believed on a non-specific level. I just really jumped to the description, and when
I like the examples. Can you give one of the examples off the top of your head?
So she was talking about. Hold on, I gotta find because in the flat arc, I think this is in the flat arc. Yeah, in the flat arc, she uses let me find the gladiator as one of the examples of the first act, because in setting up the first act, she says the character probably won't start out the story with knowledge of the lie, and she uses lie in capital, like that is a noun, that's a thing. And I was having trouble like parsing that, like just how she was saying it. But when you go to the example of Gladiator, how does the first act manifest in a flat arc? And in Gladiator, it's a belief that Rome must continue to be a light in the darkness of a barbaric world rather than the slave of a single man. The truth in opposition to the lie. Maximus's normal world has been that of Rome as ruled by the wise and benevolent Marcus Aurelius, but it's already beginning to crumble. Aurelius is dying and his unstable son awaits in the wings. Throughout the first act, Maximus is faced with the choice of returning home to his family or remaining to protect Rome. And So that's the example of that, the truth versus the lie. But then also she has a good add-on here that says this is a good example of an instance in a flat arc in which the thing the character wants and the thing the character needs actually stand in conflict, just as in a positive change arc. And the way that she's kind of breaks that up makes me like, okay, I get what she's saying now.
Yeah.
But so most of what I did for the rest of these chapters was go through and look at the examples to parse out what she's talking about in relation to stuff that I already understood.
Yeah. And so there is change there, but it is a flat arc. And I think for me, the reason a flat arc works for a lot of people is that it usually means the character has strong ideals of some sort. And so that's what appeals to the most in a flat arc, is because so there is a change, but the thing is he started out being somebody who would do the right thing as long as he knew what the right thing was, and then he suffered all the way through as consequences of doing the right thing, trying to free people and stuff like that. And so I think that's very appealing as a story. Now the story, the character change arc, where you have somebody who's the underdog, or somebody who's weak and becomes strong, or rich and becomes, those are all very powerful arcs as well too. I just don't think everything has to be that.
I agree. But I think too that knowing, like setting out to write a positive or a negative or flat, like if you just set out to tell a story, it doesn't have to necessarily sit down and like base it off of these things. You could just have a story in mind. I think like reading this book helps me contextualize what I'm trying to do with the individual characters in the book. Because I'll set up like, I need a character to do, I don't know, an electronic hack on something. So I need a computer expert. But now I'm in my head as I'm setting that up. How do I use that character in a way to affect the main character through the arc of through both arcs, and looking at that secondary character and going, do I need to attach a arc to that to better affect the main character's arc? Instead of just using it as a plot device. So I don't know, that's just me.
Yep. So look, a couple of things. I'd be curious to talk about some examples of the other arcs, but right there, I'm like, so do we want to talk about the difference between a character arc and a plot arc? Because like you've been reading lots of thrillers lately. I've been reading The Gray Man, and those genres are heavy plot. They're heavy plot, and so they have more of a plot arc than a character arc. Right. And so let's talk about the difference between the two and kind of dig into that.
All right. So what's your opinion of what do you think the two main differences are?
So I think that your plot arc heavy genres like thrillers, I guess a lot of military sci-fi, Die Hard, or the other one. Well, those I almost flipped to the other type of arcs, but I think they are more of, so the change has to be in the arc. So your inciting incident is going to be situational. Nakatomi Plaza is taken over. So you're going to have some change because he's got to basically go along the hero's journey, hit all these obligatory scenes where he gets different things, where he acquires weapons, where he acquires an ally, where he's betrayed, and go through all of those things to fulfill a plot-based arc. But the character arc is much flatter. There still kind of is some change because, he kind of admits that maybe he was a jerk and maybe his marriage failed because but I think that if you were charting it on a graph, the events would have a much steeper graph than the character change.
Yeah, well, but again, that comes back to genre and the type of book. I mean, if you're wanting to read an action book, then you want heavy plot arcs because you want the action and the situations and the action reaction and the figuring it out and all that stuff. And you don't necessarily want the deep emotional change in your hero. You kind of want them to be this anchor, that this sort of steadfast thing that carries through the chaos of the world around them. Best Christmas movie ever. Absolutely. I don't care what my wife says.
Same.
So, but then if you're reading a different kind of book, they would want to be focused on the internal turmoil that that Bruce Willis's character is going through as he tries to, and the action would be kind of that would be the smaller arc. I mean, so much of this just boils down to who you're writing for and what kind of book you're writing. Heavy, hard character arcs are typically going to be in, I don't really know what to call them, but like romances and high literature type stuff, where you're doing these deep dives into people's psyches and emotions. Whereas mil sci-fi, that kind of thing, you're going to have smaller, you can have some character arc, but most of it is just going to be the bad guys are doing this and this is what we're going to do about it. And holy shit, that didn't work. Well, let's try this. And yay, we won. The Death Star's blown up now. It's just.
And I think too, like in mil sci-fi, like in the Valor series, like especially the first book, when reading this book, I try to put the terms into stuff that I've already written. So in Edge of Valor, the lie is that the lie for the character is that everything that people are telling him or the events that have happened are true. The truth is that they're lying. So it's interesting that way. But then he has a flat arc where he stays the same because all he's interested in really is the truth. But as the books kind of progress, he changes to believe that the truth matters, but people also matter as well. In the one of the examples that they used here in the flat arc is like the Thor movies, where Thor, the first one is a positive change arc, but then the other two, the ones are flat arcs. So it goes positive to flat.
Right. That's really interesting you say that. I know I'm interrupting you, but because I'm looking at Rick's comment and he says that he usually has definite character in his Milfi, especially in book one. So it goes kind of just what you're saying with the Thor. Sometimes book one is more about character arc.
Yeah, that's
where you get people invested in your characters. Then after that,
you can let them be. Because I mean, if you're writing a series like that, you want book one to be that foundation you build the house on.
But you're not going to read for the character, right? For the most part, you're reading for the character. So if you don't. Right. If you don't have something with character focus in that first book, then the people aren't going to care they aren't going to care about the character in the first book, but they're not going to care enough about the character to continue reading.
But you might not want to try to drag out their personal angst over 11 books. Like, for example, like a Hunger Games. The first book, I enjoyed it, I was kind of, but by the third book or however many books they went to, I was like, they just took this. They took a small problem about who she was going to, be interested romantically and stretched it through the whole series, and nobody seemed interested, including the people in the romance. And I was like, that should have been resolved in the first book.
Yeah, no, I agree about that. Well, she kind of flip-flops back and forth too.
Yeah, and that makes your characters seem weak. So flip-floppy characters need to be handled with care, because that just makes them seem kind of that's not a heroic trait. I think flip-flopping is not a heroic trait.
Right.
You should be careful with it in your main characters.
Well, and Rick has a good point about the Thor movies, is that in Thor 3, he believes that he has to change from believing his power came from his hammer and realizing it came from within. That is true. And it is a positive arc.
I would consider that kind of a minor arc, though.
Right.
That's not a huge. You couldn't carry the whole story with him changing his.
Well, that's that's an example of the lie the character believes. It's not huge, but he believes it's the hammer, but really it's from within. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's an example of one of those there's a lot of plot because you got Hulk and all that, all the shit going on.
A lot of things going on.
Yeah, and then that is kind of his smaller little. It's almost a subplot, his character arc,
The other example they used that I thought was interesting was Captain America Civil War for the flat arc. And the first act begins with Captain America, a belief that freedom can't be achieved by a police state monitoring and destroying threats before they happen, the truth in opposition to the lie. Steve Rogers' current normal world is a shaky one in which he increasingly is increasingly uncomfortable with the jobs Shield is asking him to do, supposedly in the name of freedom. Almost right away, he has shown distrusting the motives of others who are using him as a weapon to achieve their own ends. After he learns what Director Fury has up his sleeve, he knows he cannot maintain his truth if he remains with Shield, and spends the bulk of the first act contemplating simply walking away. I had not thought of Captain America as a flat.
Yeah, actually, that was Winter Soldier, not Civil War.
Did I say Civil War? I meant
Civil War. Yeah.
I said Civil War. I even read Winter Soldier because it's Winter Soldier. But yeah.
But no, that's a great example of that. I think that's very accurate because that was his struggle. You know, then honestly, that mirrors a lot of what happened in the comics, because he was always a character. The whole thing with him coming back from the 40s was, you know, he's more about the ideal of America than what the political landscape is at whatever time he finds himself in. And that character's always had to butt up against. He's like the ideal versus the reality, you know. And I think that movie did an excellent job of illustrating that.
Oh, I think that the Winter Soldier and Civil War are two of my favorite of the MCU movies.
I think Winter Soldier is the most well-made movie in all the MCU, simply because it's a political thriller that happens to have a superhero in it.
Right.
You know, but it's just a super well done movie. But that was the one I think that really kind of defined Cap's.
Well, and it kind of goes back to what, Scott, you were just saying earlier about the difference between plot arc and character arc, and how the two don't necessarily have to mirror each other. You can have a character arc that is completely separate from the plot, and it still work. Like what Captain America learns throughout the movie doesn't really change him as a person.
Well, I think that actually is what drives the plot arc in that movie, because once he realizes, okay, this is what I'm about, they're not about that, and then he aims to misbehave, and then shit starts blowing up, you know.
Right. Which is an interesting thing for him, because then he turns from being a unreserved patriot to looking at things with a more cynical view. And I think that's maybe why I like that movie more than the rest of the Captain Americas or the other Marvels in general, is because it like you're saying, it's more political, but it's seeing what's actually going on instead of what they're wanting you to see.
Right. And that adds a touch of realism to it that a lot of those movies are, you know, they're not designed for that kind of.
You're saying it's
that kind of theme.
Coming of age movie.
Well, it's like with everything the government does, right? Like everything the government does, they're saying, we're doing this for your own good, and this is for the good of the people, and blah blah blah. But they do a lot of shady shit too, and you know, and it's not just the government, corporate, anyone with power does that. And again, I'm not trying to get political. I'm talking within the realm of fiction. You know, you're going to have characters that they just follow the line, you know, wrap themselves in the flag or the corporate handbook or whatever, and that's what they're about, and they just follow orders. And then you're going to have those who have higher ideals that think, no, we can do better, and they try to fight. They try to out the shenanigans, right?
You know, and I think that's kind of what Cap ends up doing at the end of that movie.
It's kind of like having the realization, like everybody a couple of years ago were just like crazy about, I can't believe that that Russia would interfere in our elections, and all this like just like rage about that thing happening, right? And then
did they not grow up in the Cold War like me and Chuck?
Yeah, I
just assume the Russians are interfering.
Yeah.
They always
so
have
naive
been.
to think that they weren't doing that,
yeah.
But it's also naive to think that we haven't done that either.
Oh
like,
my God!
all across
Come
the world.
on.
So, like,
check out the history of how many elections across the world.
yeah, that's what I mean.
CIA
Like,
and everybody's bought in
There was-
over the years.
yeah,
was
like
interesting-
it's just crazy that the
there was
it's not
an
even.
interesting.
Go ahead, Scott.
No, go ahead. You're in the middle of a thought.
Oh, I
Finish
was
it.
gonna say it's crazy that and this is why I like Winter Soldier, because it kind of takes the veneer off of the government, because they
Right.
always have some other motive, but they're not always like they don't always do good. Like even our government, they don't always do good. I'm not that naive, right? And this for Captain America, his 100% holistic character finally sees that and has to take that into account as he's doing everything else.
Yeah. I was going to say that I'd read someplace a few years ago that no country with a McDonald's has ever attacked America. I don't know if that's true or not, but it sounds like
No country with the McDonald's. Interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean that's
it's probably a myth, but it sounds
that's the whole
legit.
free trade philosophy. The best way to world peace is just to make sure everybody's dependent on everybody else for stuff, you know, because you're not going to blow up somebody who's sending you their blue jeans.
That's right.
Oh, yeah,
Levi's.
So we've talked about all these character arcs. Someone educate me on what a negative character arc is, please.
Okay, so this is something that I actually am really excited about talking.
I know
about.
You said that earlier. You're welcome for the segue.
Because
segue, Chuck.
So like in the examples that she used in her book, which is hilarious, is Star Wars episodes 1, 2, and 3 as a negative change. Right. But no, that's not the funny part. The funny part is she basically says, I'm paraphrasing, she basically says that these three movies, this story arc, Vader's story arc, could have been the best negative character arc story ever told if the writing had not been so shitty. Basically is what she said.
I do not disagree with that.
So the other example I have, and this is kind of a lesser known example of the negative change arc more than Vader, is Arthas from World of Warcraft, which I have a statue of him.
Statue, huh?
I'm gonna have to play this game at some point.
You don't even have to play the game. You can just watch.
It'll eat your life.
If you go on YouTube and you Google like Arthas, like
Arthas.
Arthas, or just say the Wrath of the Lich King or the Fall of the Lich King or whatever. I've read the book and I've followed the story. Basically, the story of Arthas is that he is a paladin, kind of a warrior for light, in training, and this scourge starts infecting his country. And he's fighting against it, and there's really nothing they're able to do, and the scourge is winning. And Arthas, his goal is to save his kingdom, again, basically at all costs. And so when they see that this disease is spreading and they can't stop the spread, they come to this town, and basically this town is what they have found to be maybe kind of the source of an expanding plague. He basically seals up the spoiler alert, and I'm going to wait a couple of seconds. If you want to know about Arthas and you want to read it or watch the video, go and do it, and then you can come back and listen to me spoil it now, because I'm going to spoil it because it's a great story. He's like I said, he's a warrior for light, right? He is a soldier of justice, and he's fighting against evil. And when he comes up against this town where they have found evidence of this is where the plague is coming from, at no fault of the own of the residents, they find out that it's this grain that's been corrupted. The residents really have had nothing to do with it. He seals up the town and burns it to the ground, killing everybody in the town,
even though it wasn't their fault. Even
though there might have been another way. He is convinced that if he does not stop the spread of the disease, it will completely destroy his country. And he's convinced that this is the way to save his country and his people. So he murders a whole town. That is the start of his negative arc. And
that's quite a start.
and it goes downhill from there. And he is basically, because of that corruption gives an end to this demon, which basically starts kind of corrupting his mind and pushing him in a direction towards what's called the Frozen Throne, where this epic rune blade called Frostmourne is kept in this mountain. And Arthas believes that if he can get a hold of Frostmourne, he can defeat the demons and all this, right? And that's what the voice is telling him. But the voice lies to him. And then when he grabs Frostmourne, he realizes that the voice is lying to him. But then he decides, I've come this far, I can't turn back, and continues. And just he basically, in his effort to fight against the Scourge, he becomes the Lich King, which is he becomes the person in charge of it all, and then kills his father and completely destroys the nation and blah blah blah. So like
then he bans people putting pineapple on pizza, and
yes, no pineapple.
Oh,
on pizza.
I'd start a revolution on that.
Yeah, I'd fight for that. I'd definitely be in the resistance.
And as far as negative tangent arcs go, Arthas is by far my favorite, with Vader being the concept of Vader, not the story that we got.
Right. No, I agree with her wholeheartely about that.
So what did
he starts out, all he wants is everybody to be safe.
Right.
And all this stuff.
Right.
And then he just, his desire to make the galaxy safe turns into this, the only way I can make it safe is to just slaughter the entire planet with anyone on it.
And he thinks only he can do it. And that's part of what the speed
only
of his
him
destruction.
And the Emperor. Yeah.
Only him. He's the only one that's good enough. And that starts him down the path, in my opinion.
But you don't know the power of the dark side.
He can't accept that,
well, and also they mentioned that the council refuses to teach him and all this stuff.
Right.
So and that
arrogance,
also
pride.
He did have a lot of setbacks there.
Yeah.
He did. I still blame Windu, and it's all his fault.
But he had a kick-ass purple lightsaber.
If he'd have been like, look, Anakin, you're right. I shouldn't kill him. Let's put him in chains and throw him in the brig. Everything would have been fine.
I say that I really love Arthas, and that's my favorite. But Vader's story is idea of Vader's story is great, and
just poorly executed.
The core concepts of his fall make sense. Like it's a legitimate personal thing. Like, I don't want anybody to die. Like, who would not want that?
Right.
Like,
what sane person doesn't want that? You know? Because I know a lot of those people. I want them to be okay.
I wish that there's talk about them redoing or doing a new trilogy, right? That like wipes out 7, 8, and 9. New trilogy in whatever. I don't think it's going to be a new 1, 2, 3, but I think it's going to take
canon,
out
whatever it is.
Right. I wish that they would just redo 1, 2, and 3. Like they redo every other movie.
I kind of agree with that. I'd like to see a decent set of prequels.
How many Spider-Mans did they make that reinvented, or Batman, right? Like how many are they like redo Star Wars? Just redo it 1, 2, and 3. You don't have to touch 4, 5, and 6. Just redo 1, 2, and 3 and make it like the best kick-ass Star Wars. Make Jon Favreau and what's his name from The Mandalorian do it so they can do it right. And then give us a really good Vader story. That's all I want. I mean, it's a lot. It's
not. Yeah, it's just $500 million.
That's whatever.
So somebody Corey says Walter White, Breaking Bad, negative story arc.
Dude, yes. If you haven't seen Breaking Bad, I absolutely love Breaking Bad, and the writing in that show was phenomenal. And Walter White is probably you've got Vader, you've got Arthas, and you have Walter White. But Walter's decline was really quick because he decided really quickly to do the bad thing.
Yeah, but then
the minute he saw that first big pile of money, he's like, okay, I'm in.
There's a couple of times where he's offered a way out and he turns it away, even though.
Yeah,
he has like a friend that's basically going to give him all this money, but he doesn't want people to give money. He wants, I can't remember which episode it is, but you probably remember it.
I don't know. What's interesting about that is like now that I'm thinking about it in the context of our conversation, I wonder if we can talk about this. Is Breaking Bad a negative change arc, or is it a flat arc with a negative change prologue? Kind of like because Walter doesn't
redemption story.
Walter doesn't change throughout the story. Like like once he decides that he's gonna sell meth,
once
he doesn't ever backtrack. And matter of fact, when he goes through it, he turns into, I'm gonna be the baddest fucking drug lord of this whole thing.
I kind of agree with the moment from the introduction to the lock-in when he really decides, okay, this is my life now.
Yeah.
That is kind of like the first book in a series.
Right.
I think that set up the character. Now, where I think the real arc occurs, though, because like Scott said, there's a couple of points where he could have gotten out and chooses not to. Yeah. Is it goes from him being the high school teacher washing his students' tires, and that right. he's beat down. He has a very low opinion of himself. He doesn't feel like he has any personal power. He's just, he feels like an utter failure in life as a man and everything else. Right. And then suddenly through Breaking Bad and becoming this big meth dealer, he feels powerful. He feels like a man, whatever that means. And he can't let go of that. I don't think the drugs and the money are really what he was addicted to. It was that sense of I'm somebody when I'm
because in the beginning he was not in charge. Like he wasn't in charge. He was not powerful. He was kind of a pushover.
I think that's his arc, is that he feels,
and that's why he didn't want to.
And that's why he doesn't want to give it up.
Right. That's why he couldn't give him enough money, because he'd just be beholden to somebody and they'd push him around again. And then he'd just kind of be spineless.
I mean, at one point the dude had pallets of money. He could have retired. Right. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
right. Is that a common flaw? Is that a common trap for those types of things? I'm curious.
I think it could be. I think if you've got the kind of ego that craves that sense of significance, then absolutely it could be.
Yeah, I'd really want to reach out to KM and be like, hey, is Breaking Bad flat arc or negative arc? Like, just get the set in stone.
I think you can look at it two ways, though. I mean, I think for him personally, I think it's kind of a flat arc. But if you look at it from a societal standpoint, right? Like how society would view him, it's definitely a negative arc. I mean, he's a drug kingpin by the end.
You should just ask her if she'll come on the show, and we can just ask her.
Oh, true. Corey says Vic Mackey from The Shield, and again, I think with this, I think it's
still haven't seen The Shield.
It's still kind of a flat arc in my opinion.
That was the little short bald guy, right?
Yeah. He was the commish. I can't remember.
The commit. Yeah. I can't remember the actor's name, but yeah, I saw some of that one. That was pretty good. I remember enjoying that.
The Shield was really good.
I didn't watch all of it, but I do remember watching some.
The Shield was really good, and in the same vein of Breaking Bad, where and in this case, I think really it is a flat arc, because even like as the credits are rolling for the first episode, he's a bad guy. He's an anti-hero, right? Like nothing really pushed him over the edge to be a dirty cop. He was already there when we met him in the first
I remember
episode.
Like one of the first things I remember seeing him do was beat somebody up with a phone book.
Well, and spoiler alert, but the very first thing he does in the very first episode is shoot one of his cop partners, because he finds out that his cop partner is actually working for IA. And that's like in the very first episode of
very first. That's how you establish a character there.
And that I think that was even before the credits rolled. I'd have to go back and watch it, because I remember seeing that and going, say what? Because The Shield was the first thing on FX. That was the first show on television that used the S word, right? Like every other network show, like cut the line at like damn and hell, and I think that was it. But this show, like, I don't know if they ever made the transition to fuck, but they all like the shit was like their That was the top of the thing. They did that in every.
Probably shocking to the viewing public at the time.
Oh yeah, definitely was, and it pulled attention to the show because of that.
I'm not sure if they're still talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
I'm not sure they're still talking about negative change characters, but somebody says the Thing in the first Fantastic
No, that
Four.
was Michael Chiklis. Rick.
Michael Chiklis.
Michael Chiklis was the actor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I just think that the Thing should get more attention in comics. I don't know.
I don't know that they've ever done a Final Four story. Well, like they've all been flops, all of them, which sucks because I think I like the Silver Surfer. Like he was a cool character.
Yeah, those first two had potential that just wasn't realized. And then the most recent one was just a waste of time.
Well, that's what I'm saying. How many bad movies do they have to restart?
Let the MCU get hold of it. It'll be all right.
And finally, let's have a good Star Wars. Can we do that? Can we just have a reboot of a good Star Wars movie?
Or they could go off and just do more Mandalorian side universe, get into the expanded Star Wars universe. And
I started watching dude, I just saw that they're doing a live action. Where did I see that? I saw news the other day that they had wrapped filming on a live action Thrawn.
Yeah, it's
show.
Ahsoka. It's Ahsoka chasing down Thrawn, I think.
It's interesting because I'm in an anthology with Tim Zahn, right?
Yeah, we know.
And it's right here on my wall. Tim Zahn.
Yeah, we know.
Yeah. And so we did these signature cards
when I was having tea with the Dalai Lama.
Yeah. When I was hanging out with
David
Wayne Johnson.
Johnson. So we were doing these signature cards for these book plates that everybody signed and we mailed to the next author. Well, so it came to me and then it was supposed to go to Tim, and I kept waiting to get his address from him. I kept waiting. And finally I sent Mike Williamson a message and I was like, hey, I'm not getting his address. And he's like, yeah, they're in the middle of filming. And so I think that is what they were filming. He was at the set of that deal, which is, I think that's freaking awesome that he got to be there.
They don't get emails on the set.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't know.
I do. I have read that a lot of times for stuff like that, they actually collect phones.
I wouldn't doubt it.
You know, I mean, I think the actors are allowed to hang on to them because they're under contracts, but like just the rank and file, they've got security measures. Well, I mean, remember what the guy that wrote Falcon and Winter Soldier told us about going through 4 doors of security and not being able to talk shop in the lobby. And I mean,
with everybody's ability to put that out in the world now being so powerful that you would never have any secrets of any movie.
Right.
At all.
Yeah. You'd have a whole behind the scenes.
You know, and if they want to, if I was involved and they want to pay me a bunch of money to put my phone in a box when I come in, I guess I would learn to be without my phone for a couple hours.
Well, yes, I'm sure they all sign like really hefty NDAs.
Hardcore NDAs. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so another example of a negative character arc off the top of your. Okay, here's one. How about what's the most significant negative character arc that you've written, if you have?
Oh, that's so I've actually written one, and I was just editing it this morning. For it's a short fantasy story that I wrote a couple of years ago, and never did anything with. I submitted it to the Bane fantasy competition several years ago. Obviously, it didn't win. But so Rob Howell with CKP put out a call for fantasy short stories, and I submitted, and he accepted it, and he did some edits on it. And this is basically like a mini Arthas type story where this guy is going to kill who he believes is the leader of the bad guys. It's a really easy way to say it, but it's really dumbing down the story. But he's going to kill the leader of the bad guys, and when he gets there, he fights the leader of the bad guys, and then he wins, only to find out that there has to be someone there to control the bad guys. Otherwise, the bad guys will pour out
rampant.
And run rampant. And the guy that he beat had been doing it for like 1,000 years. And the punishment that he had been put under physically and mentally over those 1,000 years had basically worn him down. And so he was calling the story is called A Song of Mercy. And throughout the story, the character hears this person in his mind, and he's saying mercy. And the character interprets that as the bad guy saying, please don't hurt me. But when you get to the end of the story, he learns that the bad guy was actually the good guy, and he was calling the main character there to kill him, basically giving him a mercy kill, like putting him out of his misery. And then the main character of the story takes over as the person who's controlling.
But if he was a true negative character arc, he'd go, and I really didn't sign up for that. Go ahead, demons, rampage all you want. I'm out. I got to.
Well, that is true.
And then walk off and let
right. He goes from I've got to handle this evil to who gives a shit.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
I can't do something, but I don't know.
So I don't know. Maybe that would be. Maybe it's not actually a negative. Maybe it's a flat arc.
Still makes a heroic choice at the end.
Yeah.
But if he makes some other choice, justifies, he goes, you know what? I think we're just gonna. I mean, it didn't work out well for the last guy. You keep doing the same thing, you keep getting the same result. I'm gonna be progressive and proactive, and I'm gonna skip town on this one. I'm gonna roll the dice. Maybe all those demon hordes are misunderstood.
Scott McGlasson says Mike Douglas from Falling Down. I just saw a clip of this movie, and it was the clip where those two guys try to jack his wallet. And he's like, this is not the day, guys.
I don't know. I don't know that I would consider that a really strong character arc, because the movie starts off with him like he knows he's going to go out that right. He's already shattered, and he's going to go out that he knows he's going to go out that day and start, fixing the world, all the things he quote unquote sees that's wrong with it. So you don't really get to see him before, but you find out what he was before over the course of them trying to catch him.
Right.
So there's an arc there, but it's almost like it's delivered through backstory, So, I mean,
implied character arc. Is that a thing?
Yeah. It's almost like it's a flat arc because he's already broken.
Right.
But you get to see that there was an arc to get him to that point, It's a
flat arc, but it's showing the repercussions of his negative change.
Right. It shows you why he's flat now.
Which was a result of his positive character arc when he was young and naive.
Exactly.
it comes down to, I'm going to write a story. Just know what I mean, not what I say. And just figure all of that out.
Yeah.
This story is all the things.
I need to watch that movie again.
It's been a long time since I've seen that one.
I think that was one of my favorite Michael Douglas early movies. That and everybody talks about Romancing the Stone. I don't know that I've ever watched that movie.
That's a great movie.
That was pretty good. I mean, it's from the 80s, but it was pretty good. It's a good movie.
The one that I remember that is one of my favorites is Disclosure. Yeah,
that was a good one.
I watched the movie and then I immediately went and read the book. And I like the game. The game was really good.
I really like that one.
David Fincher directed it, and I can't remember if he wrote that movie or not. But the game really and Panic Room, and now we're kind of off topic. But the game and Panic Room, really. So David Fincher is one of my favorite directors because of the way he directed both of those movies.
Yeah.
Gosh,
what about you, Scott? You ever write any negative
here, way over there?
Yeah, we're rambling today, boys. It's that kind of day.
Yeah, I think it's all right.
You read any negative arcs?
I'm trying to think. I don't know. I think my arcs are all over the place because
I think most of
I would like to say Death by Werewolf. It starts out the main character basically. I wrote that book when I was an EMCU detective, and it was basically about somebody who's just completely broken. And so he starts out and he realizes that basically he's been tortured and abused because he has some sort of magical creature. And that's why he was getting, tortured beyond belief, because he was a lycanthrope, he's a werewolf, so he could heal. and they did all this horrible stuff to him. But so by the time you come into the story, he's a cop and he's trying to do the right thing and trying to kind of make a break. And but he finds out some bad stuff happened to his partner, his female partner, and so he goes and finds her boyfriend and kind of who he knows is into fitness, and so he challenges him to a run, and then he runs him to death until he dies, and that's the first first scene. So it's a pretty dark book, but I don't know that it's negative character arc, because by the end he's trying to save people and like a traditional thing, but it's an extremely dark book, and and I thought that's why it didn't take off, but maybe it's just my marketing sucked. but yeah, there's some really dark characters in that one.
Guy Anthony DeMarco says romancing the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That's pretty much what it was, but it was still fun.
Yeah. I've been trolling so many people on Facebook this week talking about my favorite, worst movies of the trilogy. And I said that Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was the best Indiana Jones movie. People lost their mind.
Oh my gosh, really?
I forgot to do it yesterday before we work. I was going to troll you back, and I was going to put single ply toilet paper is the best toilet paper on yours. But I'm not. I couldn't figure out the meme, so
so my first one was Batman. I said that Val Kilmer was the best Batman ever. And that launched an entire thread of angry, triggered people that I thought was hilarious, because he's definitely not the best Batman ever.
That brings back up to my earlier reaction to your idea to remake the first 3 Star Wars. Is I'm tired of them remaking these movies. Why do they keep remaking Batman? Just fucking stop.
Well, because they make money. It's a known entity.
Exactly.
Yeah, which means they're not taking creative risks, and all the people, and it basically means
if you're going to do Batman,
established artists
with it,
Yeah.
Well,
but that doesn't give you room for new people with new ideas.
It's not really a creative risk; it's a financial risk.
Right. That it comes down to risk.
Yeah, the creative risk is doing something like Memento or Inception, like that, or Tenet. And
Tenet was huge creative risk.
But
the financial risk, it's the guys fronting the $500 million for The Last Jedi. And then,
well, that's what they get for being greedy. You should have made a better product. You get that's a cautionary tale. Don't be.
You absolutely should not have bean counters making creative decisions.
No,
I think that's where a lot of movies have gone.
Luke's really hating on my beard today, guys. Have you seen this?
I saw that, and I meant to applaud him and encourage him, because I like to attack the beard.
I don't know. I think the beard's okay.
When he came on, he said that his first comment was,
"Your beard is a negative change
arc."
That is true. That is true. I trimmed it. It was getting kind of long. I trimmed it. And he says my beard is a financial risk. I'm kind of
might be
sitting kind of close to home.
You probably buy some grooming stuff and beard oil.
I might try to write a short story with a negative change arc.
The time with your
loss, an actual negative change arc.
The productivity time lost staring in the mirror, looking at your beard for hours.
Yeah. Probably. What about you, Chuck? Have you ever done a negative?
What caused me to ask the question was I was thinking about my Paragons trilogy, and I don't know if you guys listen to the audiobook or anything, but what I wanted to do when I sat down to read that, well, it's just a lot of people did, so I don't know. But anyway, it's free.
I forgot that it is free.
So what I wanted to do is I wanted to have 2 main characters. And I wanted them to kind of be at the opposite ends of the spectrum with their character arcs, and then still be the opposite by the end of the trilogy. So I've got one character who's just cynical and foul-mouthed and doesn't believe in anything, and just, she's been abused, and she's just not a happy person. And then I've got this other guy who's very middle class, had loving parents, well-educated, kind of idealistic. He's a crime reporter for the Chicago Tribune, so he's got some kind of political ideals, just a kind of a regular, well-educated Joe. And by the end of it, the female character has learned to believe in something and to strive for higher ideals, and he's become a lot more cynical and violent over the course of the trilogy. So it's like I was thinking about his arc, and
it's a negative character.
It's a negative character arc, but at the same time, it's what he had to do to adapt to the circumstances he found himself in. So,
famous last words. Now he's an artist.
Change to survive necessarily negative?
It is in the case of Arthas the Archmage or Archlich or whatever.
That's true.
What he had to do.
The Lich King.
He did, and then became a Lich. That's how you become a Lich King. That's
how
the
you
answer.
become a Lich King.
That's how you become a Lich King. No, but I think that's actually really brilliant, and is to do a negative character arc, but it's also it's a positive character arc in the same story. So it's kind of a switch, like you said. But it kind of, I think that could appeal to readers, because if they hate negative character arcs, they still have someone to root for in the other character.
Yeah, I mean, that I was just really kind of playing with
it's
the
like
crap.
juxtapose.
Yeah, I was having fun with it, but like he gets things happen throughout the course of and this is over 3 books, not just 1 book. So by the end of there's some things that happen, and he kind of becomes obsessed with revenge, and he becomes angry about things that have happened to him. So by the time you reach the 3rd book, he's like obsessed. And just like he will knock the hell out of anybody that gets in his way. He's short fused, and and it's Aaron and Israel. Israel's the guy, and it starts out with him telling her, "Okay, calm down. It's all right. It's all right." By the 3rd book, they've reversed roles, and she's like, "Look, man, you need to chill."
Right.
So but the question that came to me was, so he has to change because his circumstances change, and he changes in kind of a negative way, but at the same time, it's a change he has to make because of the environment. So I don't know. It's an
interesting moral question. And does the reason matter?
Right. Because it wasn't a change he wanted to make. It was forced on him.
And maybe that's what maybe that is the secret to making some of these anti-heroes still be more heroic and appealing to the readers, because you don't truly like I always use Sandor Clegane. Sandor Clegane is a terrible human being in the Game of Thrones books. But every time I read it, by the time I get to the end of the series, I'm really, really a fan of Sandor Clegane. But then I reread the series, and the first time I meet him, I'm like, this guy is a horrible, he killed a butcher's boy. What an asshole.
Right.
And stuff. So I guess if you understand, or another great one is from what's the Yellowstone? Beth.
Oh yeah.
When I first watched Beth, I couldn't stand her because she's so caustic. But by the time you realize her motivations, now you're rooting for her, because she's a horrible, horrible human being in everything she does, and she treats people so badly, which is against everything that I stand for in life in general. But when you figure out why she's like the way she is, now you have some empathy for her situation. So maybe the background of the reasoning is the key to making a negative character arc appealing to readers.
One of the things that Case says in her book is that writing a negative character arc, in writing a negative character arc, you really need to be conscientious of the foreshadowing more so than in a positive or flat. Because like if you look at the way the season 8 of Game of Thrones wrapped up Daenerys's negative character arc, the foreshadowing was iffy. Even though it was there, it wasn't like genuinely well done. And so if you're setting up, oh yeah, 100%, 100%.
But from the show, it's kind of jarring,
right? Exactly, and that's I think that was her point, was if you don't seed that stuff in well enough in the book, the negative change won't make as much sense, and the sympathy or empathy from the reader won't be there, and so that negative change won't resonate. Like they won't care. It's like Vader, right? Like Vader was a completely evil person, but because of how he made that change conceptually, not the writing, everybody roots for him.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It makes sense because, like, after I wrote The Last Reaper and all those books, I'd written other characters, and the same editor would be this character's just an asshole,
right?
And so I was basically trying to write more Reaper, who's an anti-hero. But the thing is he just didn't have, or as a reader, I didn't buy off on his rationale for doing what he was doing. I'm like, no, this guy's just a dick.
Right.
You know, and so and that's not appealing to the reader. That just pisses people off and makes them hate the protagonist, which is the kiss of death.
Yep. I don't know what we're going to talk about next week. We were talking about the writing with emotional tension, writing with emotion, tension, and conflict.
Yeah, I would like to read that one next. I was just
book right here. So that's what I'm going to start reading next.
Keep giving me homework.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Legitimate home, and you better do your homework this time.
It's gonna be a test. The beatings will continue until morale improves.
Hey, listen, you were in the military, Chuck. This is mandatory fun. Mandatory fun. I am the unit commander, and I am ordering you for mandatory fun. And you all show up on the parade field like, yeah, we're here. Yay. I'd rather go drink a beer in a bar somewhere. Everybody, thank you guys for coming and hanging out with us today on our new showtime, Tuesday at 2 p.m. Let's see. Was there anybody in the chat that I missed? Kit, hello, welcome.
There's a whole bunch of people in chat. Yeah, they got busy in there.
Guy was here.
Bard was here hating on your beard. Guy in Marco.
We're gonna have to ban him from the. Need a ban button. Ban that guy. Everybody, thank you for hanging out with us today on the live show. If you're listening,
I'll make that many swear words.
Mandatory fun of valor.
True. If you're listening on the audio feed, you didn't know we do have a live show. Tuesdays at 2 p.m. ish is our new schedule. You can check us out on YouTube.
Like clockwork.
That's true. Yeah, like clockwork, only when we're not. www.youtube.com/keystroke medium will get you to our YouTube channel, or you can just Google Keystroke Medium. We're the only ones out there. If you're watching this video on YouTube right now, smash the like button. And if you haven't subscribed, gently tap the subscribe button and then hit the notification
your own negative
bell.
Character arc by going and pressing 10 people into service and making them watch Keystroke Media. I think that is the only right thing to do. Let's start world domination now. Domination starts here. Come on, people. Let's get it.
Oh, that's good.
The time zone is Central, 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern for everybody that lives not in God's country. And we'll be back next week. We're going to talk about some reading. We're going to talk about some writing, and of course, everything in between right here on Keystroke Medium.
Possibly some beard oil jokes.
Later, guys.